안녕하세요. 원색는 고양이 제니예요. 오늘은 해리포터 2권 Chapter 16 어제 있던 거 마저 읽어보도록 할게요. 야옹! Lockhart gazed desperately around him, but nobody came to the rescue. He didn't look remotely handsome anymore. His lip was trembling, and his absence was usually too thin grin. He looked weak, thin, and weedy. Very well, he said. I'll be in my office, getting ready. He left the room. Right, said Professor McGonagall, who was natural, was flared. Let's get him out from outer outfit. The heads of houses should go and inform their students when that happened. Tell them the Hogwarts Express will take them home first thing tomorrow. With the rest of you, please make sure no students have been left outside their dormitories. The teachers rose and left one by one. It was probably the worst day of Harry's entire life. He, Ron, Fred, and George sat together in the corner of the Gryffindor common room, unable to see anyone to each other. Percy wasn't there. He had gone to send an owl to Mr. and Mrs. Weasley, then shut himself up in his dormitory. No afternoon ever lasted as long as that one. Nor had Gryffindor Tower ever been so crowded, yet so quiet. Near sunset, Fred and George went up to bed, unable to sit very longer. She knew something, Harry, said Ron, speaking for the first time since they had entered the wardrobe in the seventh room. That's why she was taken. It wasn't some stupid thing about Percy at all. She'd found out something about the Chamber of Secrets. That must be why she was... Ron rubbed his eyes frantically. I mean, she was a pureblood. There can't be any other reason. Harry could see the sun sinking, blood red below the skylight. This was the worst he had ever felt. If only there was something they could do. Anything. Harry, said Ron, do you think there's any chance at all she's not, Harry didn't know what to say. He couldn't see how Thing could still be alive. Do you know what? Said Ron. I think we should go and see Lockhart. Tell him what we know. He's going to try getting into the chamber. We can tell him where we think it is, and tell him it's a basilisk in there. Because Harry couldn't think of anything else to do, and because he wanted to be something, he agreed. The Gryffindors around them was still miserable and felt so sorry for the Weasleys that nobody tried to stop them as they got up, crossed the room, and left through the portrait hole. Darkness was falling as they walked down to Lockhart's office. There seemed to be a lot of activity going on inside it. They could hear scraping, thumps, and hurried footsteps. Harry knocked, and there was sudden silence from inside. Then the door opened the tiniest crack, and they saw one of Lockhart's eyes peering through it. Oh, Mr. Potter, Mr. Weasley, he said, opening the door a mite wider. I'm rather busy at the moment, if you would kick. Professor, we've got some information for you, said Harry. We think it'll help you. Well, it's not terribly... the side of Lockhart's face they could see looked very uncomfortable. Well, all right. He opened the door and they entered. His office had been almost completely stripped. Two large trunks stood open in the floor. Robes, shade green, lilac, midnight blue, had been hastily folded into one of them. Books were jumbled untidily into the other. The photographs had covered the walls were now crammed into boxes on the desk. Are you going somewhere? Said Harry. Oh, well, yes, said Lockhart, ripping a life-size poster of himself from the back of the door as he spoke and starting to roll it up. Arjun called, unavoidable got to go. What about my sister? Said Ron jerkily. Well, as to that, most unfortunate, said Lockhart, avoiding their eyes, as he wrenched open a drawer and started emptying the contents into a bag. No one regrets more than I. You're the defense against the dark arts teacher, said Harry. You can't go now. Not with the dark stuff going on here. Where am I stay? When I took the job, Lockhart muttered, now piling socks from towards his robes. Nothing in the job description didn't expect. You mean you're running away? Said Harry disbelievingly. After all this stuff, you did it in your books. Books can be misleading, said Lockhart sceptically. We'll rob them, Harry shouted. My dear boy, said Lockhart, straightening up and frowning at Harry. Do use your common sense. My books wouldn't have sold half as well if people didn't think I'd done all the things. No one wants to read about some ugly old American warlock, even if it's a grandpa on the cover and dresses at all. And Richard vanished the Dumben Dunch had a hard lift. And come on. So you've just been taking credit toward a lot of other people's time, said Harry incredulously. Harry, said Lockhart, shaking his head impatiently. It's not nearly as simple as that. There was working for it, but if I track these people down, I don't know exactly how they managed to do what I did. Then I had to pull a memory charm on them so remember doing it. And one thing I pride myself on is my memory charms. No, it's been a lot of work, Harry. It's not all book signings and publicity photos, you know. You want fame, you have to be prepared for a long, hard slog. He banged the leaves of his stock and locked them. But see, he said, I think there's everything. Yes, only one thing left. He pulled out his wand and turned them. Awfully sorry, boys, but I'll have to put a memory charm in you now. Can't have you blabbering my spirits all over the place. I never sent another book. Harry reached his wand just in time. Lockhart had barely raised his when Harry bellowed, Expelliarmus! Lockhart was basket backward, holding under his trunk. Wand flew high into the air. Ron caught it and flung it out of an open window. "Should not let Professor Snape teach us that one," said Harry furiously, kicking Lockhart's shank aside. Lockhart was looking at him, weedy once more. Harry was still pointing his wand at him. "What do you want me to do?" said Lockhart wrinkling. "Verdun chamber if it is. There's nothing I can do." "You're in luck," said Harry, forcing Lockhart to his feet at one point. "We think we know where it is and what's inside it. Let's go." They marched Lockhart out of his office and down the nearest stairs, along the dark corridor with the messages shone on the walls, to the door of Moaning Myrtle's bathroom. They sent Lockhart in first. Harry was pleased to see that he was shaking. Moaning Myrtle was sitting on the cistern at the end toilet. "Oh, it's you," she said when she saw Harry. "What do you want this time?" "To ask you how you died," said Harry. Myrtle's whole aspect changed at once. She looked as though she had never been asked such a flattering question. "Oh, it was dreadful," she said with relish. "It happened right in here. I died in this very cubicle. I remember so well. I hid because Olive heard me was teasing me about my glasses. The door was locked and I was crying and I asked somebody come in. I said something funny, but different language I think it must be. Anyway, what nearly got me was the boy speaking. So I unlocked the door to tell him to go and use his own toilet. And then Myrtle swelled importantly, her face shining. I died. How? Said Harry. No idea, said Myrtle in hushed tone. I just remember seeing a pair of great big yellow eyes. My whole body sort of seized up and there I was floating away. She looked dreamily at Harry. And then I came back again. I was determined to hold a live Hornby, you see. Ho ho! She was sorry she'd ever left at my glasses. Where exactly did you see the eyes? Said Harry. Somewhere there, said Myrtle, pointing vaguely towards the sink in front of her toilet. Harry and Ron hurried over to it. Lockhart was standing well back, a look of utter terror on his face. It looked like an ordinary sink. They examined every inch of it, inside and out, including the place below. And then Harry saw it. Scratched on the side of one of the copper taps was a tiny snake. That tap's never worked, said Myrtle brightly as he tried to turn it. Harry, says Ron, say something in parcel tongue. But Harry thought hard. The only times that ever managed to speak parcel tongue when will he be faced with a real snake. He stared hard at the tiny engraving, trying to imagine it was real. Open up, he said. He looked at Ron, who shook his head. English, said Fred. Harry looked back at the snake, willing himself to believe it was alive. If he moved his head, the candlelight made it look as though it was moving. Open up, he said. Except the words weren't what he heard. A strange hissing had escaped him, and once the tap glowed with a brilliant white light and began to spin. Next second, the sink began to move. The sink, in fact, sank right out of sight, leaving a large pipe exposed, a pipe wide enough for a man to slide into. Harry heard Ron gasp and look up at him. He made up his mind what he was going to do. 재밌게 들으셨다면 구독과 좋아요 꾹꾹 눌러주시고 다음 영상에서 만나요. 안녕!